Work is one of the most defining forces in modern human life. It shapes how we spend our time, how we see ourselves, how we relate to other people. It becomes part of how we introduce ourselves, part of that story we tell other people about who we are, and part of how we measure our self-worth. For many of us, work isn't just something we do. It weaves itself into our identity so thoroughly that when it shifts, when we lose a role, outgrow one, or maybe come to find the one we accepted is the wrong one, the disruption we feel is more than professional. It ends up feeling deeply personal. Work often decides where we live, what we can afford, what we let ourselves dream about, and what keeps us up at night. And for something that occupies so much of our existence, something so entangled with our sense of self, it's remarkable how little most of us are ever taught about how it really works. Think about it. Most of us grow up with almost no formal education on career development. In high school, maybe we get a workshop on matching interests to various occupations, maybe a career day, a meeting with a guidance counselor that runs about 30 minutes. We go to college or to a trade school. Maybe we visit their career center for help with a resume, attend a career fair or two, and then we're handed our credentials and expected to figure out the rest of our professional lives alone. So most people end up navigating the single most consequential thread of their adult lives through guesswork, secondhand advice, and trial and error. And unless you happen to be a career scholar or practitioner who's steeped in the field, you're probably not reading journal articles on career theory or studying the empirical evidence about what works best when navigating the job market, building a professional identity, or improving performance. Now, that knowledge exists. It just typically never reaches the people who need it the most. But what if it did? What if you had access to the science on careers and workforce evolution? What if you understood the theories, the empirical research, the structural forces that shape professional life, not just as abstract scholarship, but as tools that you can use to make sense of your own experience in a very practical way? And what if, alongside that knowledge, you gave yourself permission to ask the questions that many workplaces discourage? Like, what happens when the career path that you were committed to turns out to be more fiction than fact? Why do high performance and ambition get rewarded in some people and then punished in others? Who decided what professional means? And who does that definition really serve? And what becomes possible when you stop following a script that was never written with you in mind? This is the Post-Traditional Professional. This podcast lives at the intersection of career science and real life. We treat career development as what it really is, an interdisciplinary field of study with decades of theory, empirical research, and evolving frameworks that most people never access. And when you understand how careers function, how identity shapes professional decisions, how labor markets sort and stratify talent, how technological disruption rewrites rules in real time, you can make fundamentally different choices about your own career. We'll dig into career theory, what the research tells us about how people navigate career transitions, construct meaning in their work, and build professional identity across a lifetime. We'll examine the forces reshaping the labor market, from artificial intelligence and automation to remote work, the gig economy, and the slow erosion of the loyalty contract between employer and employee. We'll look at hiring practices, power dynamics, and the distance often observed between how organizations say they select talent and what they do behind the scenes. We'll also take a step back from the academic lens and sit with the cultural narratives and questions that resist a single applied framework. Like, what does authenticity cost in spaces that reward conformity? What happens when your performance outpaces those in the institutions where you work? What does it look like to build a career that reflects not just your skills, but your values, identity, and the way that you want to move through the world? This is a podcast for the curious and the restless, for the high performers who have grown frustrated with stagnant workplaces, for the tall poppies who have been told that they're just too much, for people who favor fluidity over rigidity, who are drawn to innovation, who feel called to improve the spaces that they occupy, and for anyone who simply wants to understand work better, whether they're rethinking everything or just beginning to wonder about their own careers. I'm Sandra Buatti-Ramos, and I'll be your host. Now, you're probably wondering a little bit about me and why you should trust what I'm saying or even tune into this podcast. And that's to be expected. So I'll give you a brief overview of my relatively long career. I'm a career researcher, scholar-practitioner, educator, and learning designer, as well as doctoral candidate. I founded an EdTech company where I advise startups and build digital learning ecosystems grounded in career science. I'm a certified coach, Academy certified resume writer, and career industry authority. I write as an executive contributor for Brains Magazine, serve on the Forbes Coaches Council, and I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Post-Traditional Careers. Before this, I spent years in higher education building the infrastructure that connects learning to work. I launched a university's first digital career education ecosystem and an AI innovation lab serving over 7,600 students. At Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs, I stewarded experiential learning programs that expanded access to careers in public impact, climate finance, and international development. And I taught professional development courses. Earlier, I worked at a private STEM college and served as interim department chair of career development. Before working in higher education, I worked in communications, consulting, and equity research, and I was recruited by the chief operating officer of an esteemed hedge fund to help build out a primary research product for an internal data team. Like many of the innovators I admire, my career has been anything but linear. I carried my skills across labor market verticals and gathered a wealth of well-rounded experience. And for a long time, I struggled to make sense of it. As I write in my book, Career Co-Pilot, I never got a proper introduction to the world of work or even college. Nobody sat me down and explained how to navigate higher education, let alone a career. In fact, I never even took my SATs. I never saw myself as college material. In my life, there wasn't a blueprint, no lineage of professional success to inherit, no family playbook for moving through institutions that were built for people with a different kind of preparation. And still, I found myself entering and contributing to teams at some of the country's most exclusive institutions, despite my supposed lack of pedigree. Some might call that luck, but I suspect happenstance theory had a lot more to do with it. The way unplanned events, chance encounters, and our responses to them shape career trajectories in ways that no linear career model can predict. In my story of becoming, I often describe myself as a dandelion that grew through the cracks of concrete. Most people will look at a dandelion and see a weed, something unwanted, out of place. pushing up where it wasn't planted and wasn't invited to be. But dandelions are among the most resilient organisms in nature. They thrive without cultivation. They don't need ideal soil or careful tending. They root in whatever narrow fractures give them access to light, and they grow anyway. Not because conditions are favorable, but because the will to grow outlasts the structures designed to contain them. Now, that's the story of a lot of us, the ones who weren't groomed for the rooms that we ended up in. The ones who built careers without a map, who learned the unwritten rules by breaking them and then having to decode them later. The ones who were told in subtle and direct ways that the path wasn't meant for us, but who decided to walk it anyway. I've worked across industries. I've reinvented my career more than once. I've been the tall poppy who clipped her own wings to fit inside of rooms that couldn't hold the full weight of what she brought. And I have spent years as a coach trying to understand why so many brilliant, driven people do the same thing. As a practitioner, I sometimes refer to myself as an authentic hypocrite. I see the problems, I name them, and I often operate within the structures that I critique because that tension is honest. And because understanding how systems work from the inside is part of what makes it possible to reshape them. These days, I'm enjoying life working parallel to those systems from the outside, where there's more room to innovate and agitate and rethink what's possible. I started this podcast because after years of coaching aspiring and experienced professionals, teaching about careers within academia, and researching the workforce, I wanted to build a space for others like me. A space to engage in meaningful dialogue, to interrogate the norms that we often accept without questioning, and to reimagine what it means to choose fluidity over rigidity in both work and life. In this podcast, we'll take on trending topics and cultural narratives. We'll bring the career science out of the academic journals and into the conversations that really matter. We'll talk to researchers, practitioners, and other professionals who have forged unconventional paths. And we'll translate theory into insight that you can use practically in your everyday lives. And above all else, we'll have honest, rigorous, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations about work and life that move us closer to the changes that we want to see. This is not a job search tips and tricks show. This is a space for inquiry, evidence, lived experience, questioning, and the kind of thinking that changes how we see ourselves and our careers. So if this sounds like something you've been searching for or something you're interested in, consider this your invitation to join the life of the post-traditional professional. Let's get into it.